Have you ever walked into a room and forgotten why you went there? Or met someone new, shook their hand, and a moment later their name had already slipped away? If you've had those moments, you know how frustrating memory lapses can feel. For many people, especially as they get older, memory struggles are not just annoying, they can feel scary. Our memories are more than information. They are the fabric of who we are. They hold our stories, our relationships, our independence, and even our sense of identity. That's why finding ways to protect and strengthen memory is one of the most valuable things we can do for our brains. Neuroscientists have spent decades studying memory, what strengthens it, what weakens it, and how to keep it sharp as we age. The exciting news is this: memory is not a fixed capacity that simply fades with time. Instead, it's a living system, shaped by how we treat our brains each day. Just like muscles, memory can be trained, supported, and even improved with the right methods. And among all the techniques researchers have studied, there's one powerful trick that keeps showing up in the science: active recall and spaced repetition. Now, that might sound a bit technical, so let's break it down in simple terms. Active recall means pulling information out of your brain rather than just passively reviewing it. For example, imagine you read a grocery list. If you just read it over and over, you might remember a few items. But if you close your eyes and try to recall them without looking, your brain actually strengthens the memory pathway. It's like lifting a weight. The effort of retrieval is what builds strength. Neuroscientists have shown that testing yourself, recalling instead of rereading, is one of the most powerful ways to lock in memories. Spaced repetition is the partner to active recall. It means reviewing information at gradually increasing intervals. Think of it like watering a plant. If you water it too much at once, it won't thrive. But if you give it the right amount, spaced out over time, the roots grow deeper. Memory works the same way. Instead of cramming, reviewing information just before you forget it makes the memory stronger each time. That's why students who use flashcards every few days, or apps that track when to review, often outperform those who study in one big chunk. You might be thinking, that sounds like study tricks for school. What does this have to do with me? The truth is, memory techniques aren't just for students. They're for anyone who wants to stay sharp, remember conversations, keep track of names, or hold on to the little details that make daily life smoother. Imagine remembering every appointment without constantly checking your phone. Imagine greeting an old friend by name without hesitation. Imagine holding on to stories so you can share them with your children and grandchildren. That's the gift of practicing memory tricks supported by neuroscience. Here's a relatable example. Think of someone who struggles to remember names at social gatherings. Most people hear a name, nod politely, and then forget it within minutes. But someone who practices active recall might quietly repeat the name to themselves, then test their memory by recalling it a few minutes later. They might even weave it into the conversation. So, John, how long have you lived here? That little act of recall locks in the name far more effectively than passively hearing it once. And if they meet John again a week later and recall his name once more, that memory is reinforced again and again. Over time, remembering names becomes easier, not because their brain is magically better, but because they've trained it using a neuroscientist-approved method. The science behind this is clear. Each time you recall a memory, you're strengthening the neural connections that store it. Neuroscientists call this long-term potentiation, which basically means the more you use a pathway in the brain, the stronger it becomes. Think of it like carving a trail through the woods. The first time you walk it, the path is faint and easy to lose. But if you walk it again and again, it becomes clearer, smoother, and easier to follow. That's exactly how active recall and spaced repetition shape your brain. This matters deeply for seniors, because memory struggles are often one of the first concerns that come with aging. It can feel discouraging to forget little things, and many people worry it's a sign of decline. But here's the hopeful truth: memory is resilient. With the right strategies, it can be supported and improved. The trick neuroscientists swear by isn't complicated. It doesn't require expensive equipment or high-tech devices. It simply requires using memory in the way the brain was designed, through practice, retrieval, and reinforcement over time. And here's the best part: this isn't about perfection. Nobody remembers everything all the time. What matters is building confidence and trust in your memory. Each time you recall something successfully, your brain gets the message, yes, I can do this. That sense of empowerment is priceless, because it reduces anxiety and replaces it with independence. So, the next time you catch yourself forgetting something, don't be discouraged. Instead, See it as an opportunity to practice. Try recalling the detail before reaching for your phone or notes. Give your brain the workout it craves. Just like exercise, a little effort each day leads to big results over time. And this is where our journey begins. Now that we understand why memory is not fixed and how the brain strengthens with use, let's dive into the first practical trick neuroscientists swear by: active recall. If you remember only one thing from this video, let it be this: your brain remembers best when you make it work. Most of us think that reviewing information means reading it again and again, hoping it sticks. Maybe you reread a phone number, an address, or a recipe 3 or 4 times, and then wonder why it slips away the moment you need it. The reason is simple. When you just reread something, you're not challenging your brain. It's like watching someone else exercise and expecting to get stronger yourself. You saw the action, but you didn't do it. Active recall changes everything. Instead of passively taking in information, you actively pull it out of your brain. Imagine you've just read a shopping list: milk, bread, apples, and tea. Instead of staring at it until it feels familiar, you cover the list and try to recall the items. The effort you put into remembering actually strengthens the memory. Even if you don't get it perfect the first time, the very act of trying builds connections in your brain. Neuroscientists call this retrieval practice, and dozens of studies show it's far more effective than simply reviewing. Let's make this real with an example. Picture Sarah, who's learning a new language in her 60s. At first, she kept reading vocabulary lists over and over, but the words slipped away. Then she tried active recall. She looked at a word in English, closed her book, and tried to recall the word in Spanish without peeking. The first attempts were clumsy, but something amazing happened. Each time she struggled to recall and then check the answer, her brain strengthened the memory. Within weeks, she noticed she could recall words in conversation that she used to forget instantly. The trick wasn't studying harder, it was studying smarter by making her brain retrieve. The science behind this is simple but powerful. Every time you recall a piece of information, neurons in your brain fire together, reinforcing the pathway that holds that memory. Think of it like a dirt path through grass. If you walk it once, the grass quickly grows back. But if you walk it again and again, the path becomes clear and easy to follow. Active recall is like walking that path daily. It makes the memory stick. The beauty of this technique is that it applies to everyday life, not just to students or language learners. Say you meet someone new and they tell you their name is Michael. Instead of letting it slide past, repeat it aloud in the conversation. "Nice to meet you, Michael." Then, a few minutes later, pause and ask yourself silently, "What was his name again?" That quick mental check-in forces your brain to recall, carving the path deeper. When you see Michael again, your brain already has the pathway built. The same applies to remembering appointments, errands, or details from conversations. Instead of writing everything down immediately, try to hold it in your mind for a few moments, then recall it later before checking your notes. This gentle challenge is what strengthens the memory. And the best part? It doesn't take extra time. You're just shifting from passively reviewing to actively recalling. At first, it might feel harder. You might even think, "I keep forgetting, this isn't working." But here's the encouraging truth: the struggle is the magic. Neuroscientists have found that the harder it feels to recall something without giving up, the stronger the memory becomes. In fact, a little difficulty is good because it forces your brain to work, and work is what builds lasting memory. For seniors, this is a game changer. Many people worry that their memory lapses mean they're losing ability. But when you use active recall, you realize your memory can still grow stronger at any age. It builds confidence. Instead of feeling discouraged by forgetting, you start to see forgetting as an opportunity to strengthen recall. Each time you try again, you're exercising your brain just like a muscle. Let's visualize this in action. Imagine you're preparing for a family gathering and you want to remember the names of all your grandchildren's friends. You write them down, but instead of glancing repeatedly, you cover the list and practice recalling. The first time, you remember 3 out of 5. You check, correct yourself, and try again. The next time, you recall 4. By the evening, you recall all 5 effortlessly. When the children arrive and introduce their friends, you greet them by name. Their smiles light up the room, and you feel that sense of independence and pride. That's the gift active recall gives, not just sharper memory, but stronger connection with the people around you. So, the first neuroscientist-approved memory trick is clear: make your brain retrieve. Don't just review, recall. Use it in conversations, errands, reading, or even when you're learning something new. Each act of recall is like a mental push-up, and over time, those push-ups add up to real strength. And here's where it gets even more exciting. While active recall is the foundation, it becomes even more powerful when paired with another method, spacing. Instead of cramming all your practice into one sitting, you spread it out and let your brain rest between sessions. In the next step, we'll explore how spaced repetition builds on active recall to create memory that lasts for years, not just hours. If active recall is like lifting weights for your brain, then spaced repetition is the schedule that makes those workouts truly effective. Neuroscientists often describe memory as a use it or lose it system. Information you don't revisit eventually fades, but information you bring back at the right time becomes stronger. That's exactly where spaced repetition comes in. So, what does it mean? In simple terms, spaced repetition is reviewing information at gradually increasing intervals instead of all at once. Think of it like watering a plant. If you pour all the water on in one day, the plant won't thrive. But if you water it regularly, with time in between, the roots grow deeper and the plant becomes stronger. Memory works the same way. Instead of cramming, you revisit what you want to remember right before you're about to forget it. That sweet spot of recall is what makes the memory grow durable and long-lasting. Let's put this into a real-world example. Imagine you want to remember the phone number of your doctor's office. If you repeat it 10 times in a row, you might hold it for a few hours, but by the next day it's gone. But if you practice it once now, once later today, once tomorrow, and then again in a few days, you'll likely remember it weeks from now. Your brain sees that information is important, and it keeps the pathway open. This is why neuroscientists say, spacing saves. A powerful story that illustrates this comes from a man named Daniel. In his 70s, he decided he wanted to learn how to play the piano. At first, he thought practicing every day for hours would be the key, but he noticed that when he crammed too much into a single session, he forgot the notes by the next morning. Then, a teacher introduced him to spaced practice. Instead of long sessions, he played short, focused ones every other day, revisiting songs just as they began to fade from his memory. Within months, he could play entire pieces by heart. It wasn't magic, it was the science of spacing. Why does this work? Neuroscientists explain it through a process called consolidation. When you first learn something, the memory is fragile, like wet cement. If you don't touch it again, it fades away. But when you revisit it at intervals, the cement hardens into stone. Each spaced review reactivates the memory, strengthens the neural connections, and makes it more resilient. Over time, the brain treats it as a core memory and stores it for the long term. You don't need fancy tools to use spaced repetition. You can start small. If you meet someone new and learn their name, repeat it to yourself soon after. Then recall it the next day, then a few days later, then the following week. Each time, the effort of pulling it back makes the memory stick. Some people use flashcards or smartphone apps designed for spaced repetition, but you don't need them. You can just use your calendar or mental reminders to check in on what you want to remember. Here's another daily life example, remembering where you put things. Instead of telling yourself once and hoping it sticks, you can reinforce it. Imagine you put your glasses on the nightstand. Say it aloud, glasses on the nightstand. Then, later in the day, mentally recall, where did I put them? Oh yes, nightstand. Then repeat it again the next morning. Soon, your brain doesn't just remember, it expects the glasses to be there. That's the power of spacing in action. For seniors, spaced repetition is especially powerful because it combats one of the most common frustrations, the tip of the tongue feeling. That moment where you know the answer but can't quite grab it. By revisiting memories in spaced intervals, you reduce those moments and increase confidence. It's not about being perfect, it's about building a steady rhythm of recall that keeps your memory pathways alive and well. The encouragement here is simple. You don't need hours of study or complicated systems. All you need is a willingness to revisit information over time. Even a few minutes each day can transform what you retain. Neuroscientists swear by this because it works for everyone: students, professionals, and especially older adults who want to keep their mind sharp. So, if active recall is the act of exercising your memory, spaced repetition is the pattern that ensures your brain builds strength instead of fatigue. Used together, they are like a 1-2 punch for memory improvement. Recall strengthens the pathway, and spacing locks it in for the long haul. And here's where it all comes together. Memory isn't only about facts or names, it's about meaning, stories, and connections. That's where the final technique shines. We've seen how active recall strengthens memory like exercise, and how spaced repetition keeps those memories alive by revisiting them over time. But there's one more memory trick neuroscientists swear by, and it may be the most enjoyable of all: making memories meaningful through storytelling and emotional connection. Why does this matter? Because the brain doesn't treat all information equally. Facts and details that feel boring or disconnected are easy to forget. But the moment something carries emotion, imagery, or personal meaning, your brain gives it VIP treatment. Neuroscientists call this the emotional tagging of memory. When an event stirs your feelings, whether joy, surprise, or even sadness, it activates the amygdala, the part of the brain that links emotions to memories. That tag tells your brain, this is important. Don't lose it. Think about the stories you can recall from decades ago. You might forget what you ate for lunch last Tuesday, but you remember your wedding day, your first job, or even a funny moment from childhood. Why? Because those moments weren't just information. They were stories rich with emotion, context, and meaning. If you want to make everyday memories stick, the trick is to turn them into stories your brain cares about. Let's take a practical example. Suppose you want to remember that your neighbor's daughter is named Lily. Instead of just repeating the name, create a story. Picture a lily flower blooming in your neighbor's garden. Add a touch of emotion by imagining the flower making you smile. Now, when you see your neighbor, your brain doesn't just store Lily equals name. It recalls the vivid image and the small joy attached to it. Suddenly, the name is much easier to remember. This technique works beautifully for seniors because it transforms memory practice from a chore into something enjoyable. You're not just memorizing facts, you're weaving them into meaningful stories. When you meet new people, connect their names to images, places, or feelings. When you want to remember a fact, tie it to something personal. If you hear that exercise boosts brain health, imagine yourself walking in the park with friends, feeling light and happy. That image becomes the anchor that locks the fact in place. A powerful story comes from Helen, a retired teacher who struggled to remember her medication schedule. At first, she set reminders on her phone, but she wanted to train her brain rather than rely on technology. So she created a story. She pictured her pills as little helpers waiting at the kitchen table each morning, eager to join her for breakfast. This simple, playful story turned a routine into something memorable. Soon, she no longer needed reminders. Her brain had anchored the memory in emotion and imagination. The science backs this up. Studies show that people remember lists of words better when they create a story linking them together. This is known as the method of Loki or memory palace technique, used by memory champions around the world. But you don't need to be a champion to benefit. Even small doses of storytelling, turning a name into an image, a fact into a scene, or a task into a playful narrative, can make memory stronger and life richer. For seniors, this trick has a deeper gift. It reinforces independence and joy. Instead of feeling defeated by forgetting, you're empowered to use creativity. Every time you build a story around a memory, you remind yourself that your brain is still capable of growth, connection, and fun. It shifts memory practice from fear into play, from frustration into hope. And this is where all three tricks come together. Active recall makes you pull memories out, strengthening the pathways. Spaced repetition ensures you revisit them at the right times, making them durable. Storytelling and emotional connection make those memories stick in a way that feels joyful and meaningful. Together, they form a complete toolkit neuroscientists trust, and one that you can start using right away. So let's bring this home with some inspiration. Memory is not about perfection. It's about living fully, holding on to what matters, and continuing to grow at every age. You may forget small details here and there. That's part of being human. But with these simple tricks, you can strengthen your recall, enjoy richer connections with loved ones, and carry your stories with confidence. Imagine this. Tonight you recall the names of people you met this week. Tomorrow you revisit them in your mind, giving your brain the gentle spacing it needs. And when you see them again, you greet them with confidence, their names tied to vivid stories in your mind. Their smiles reflect back to you the truth. Your memory is not gone. It's alive, adaptable, and powerful. So the next time you worry about forgetting, remember this. Your brain is like a garden. With recall, you tend the soil. With spacing, you water the roots. With storytelling, you let the flowers bloom. And every day, with a little care, your memory grows stronger. You are not powerless. You are not defined by lapses. You are defined by resilience, by creativity, and by the ability to keep learning and connecting. Neuroscientists have given us the tools, and now they're yours to use. And as you go forward, carry this encouragement with you. Your memory is your story, and your story is worth remembering.